Ernie Banks Baseball Cards, the ultimate guide. Like the man himself, Ernie Banks baseball cards have brought sunshine and joy to collectors and fans across the land since their debut way back in 1954. After all, Mr. Cub may be a Chicago icon, but his exuberance for the game, megawatt smile, and Hall of Fame career make him one of the game's most lovable figures, no matter what team you root for. And the same goes for his cards. Who wouldn't love to open a vintage pack and find Banks beaming back at you? Let's play too. Whatever you say, Ernie. Heck, let's play about 30 or so. That's the number of regular issue cards that feature Banks during his illustrious march to Cooperstown, and every one of them has a story unto itself. Here, then, is a complete rundown of Ernie Banks baseball cards, complete with current selling prices for cards in the most commonly available condition. Value information is based on recent actual selling prices. 1954 Topps Ernie Banks rookie card, number 94. One of several player selection missteps that helped lead to Bowman's demise in the 1950s was passing on rookie cards for both Hank Aaron and Ernie Banks in the 1954 set. Instead, collectors found the young sluggers only in packs of Topps baseball cards, then watched as the two mixed it up with Wally Moon and Gene Conley for National League Rookie of the Year honors. Moon took the Rookie of the Year, but Banks played all 54 games for the Cubs and tagged 19 home runs to proclaim that he was in Wrigley Field to stay. Today, Banks' 1954 Topps rookie card is a hobby staple, and while it doesn't carry quite the swagger of Aaron's rookie card in the set, its distinctive white background makes it really stand out against the colorful palette around it. Condition PSA 5, value 2,000 to 2,500. 1955 Bowman Ernie Banks, number 242. Bowman finally got in on the Banks game, and the Aaron game for that matter, in their iconic 1955 set. Here we see an unusual sight of a rather stoic young Banks in a posed batting follow-through in front of a light tower in Philadelphia Shibe Park. Maybe Banks was none too thrilled about his environs, or maybe he's just saving that patented Mr. Cub smile for a rainy or rainier day. Either way, this is an important piece of hobby history as Banks' only vintage Bowman card. Condition PSA 5, value $300 to $350. 1955 Topps Ernie Banks, number 28. For 1955, Topps flipped their design on their side for the first time in their history, same as Bowman did. What could have been a bit of cardboard intrigue? How did they both come up with that particular decision at that particular time? Turned into a historical footnote when Topps bought out their rival prior to the 1956 issues hitting the shelves. As for Banks' second Topps card, it's a stunner. Featuring both a headshot and an action cameo, vibrant colors, and even a cute Cub head logo. Come to think of it, though, Banks isn't offering up a smile on this 1955 Topps card either, but this beauty still makes collectors grin all these years later. Condition PSA 5, value $250 to $300. 1956 Topps Ernie Banks, number 15. Topps was all alone in the market for the first time in 1956, meaning they could pretty much do whatever they wanted. What they wanted turned out to be reusing the horizontal format, large headshots, and a facsimile autograph from 1955 while dropping the solid fade background in favor of a wider action shot on the field. The result here was the Banks card that looks pretty familiar, but also has a classic 1950s feel all its own. Condition PSA 5, value $200 to $250. 1957 Topps Ernie Banks, number 55. If you never thought of baseball cards as beautiful, then I invite you to take a really good look at the 1957 Topps Ernie Banks pasteboard. A minimalistic design that features just some understated text at the bottom of the card and a modest white border all around left plenty of focus on the image. And boy, did Topps get that one right. The vibrant shot of young Mr. Cub in a batting stance is perfectly framed, with Banks almost seemingly to be spilling out of its confines of the card and into your living room. We even get a hint of the seldom seen red swoop underlying the Chicago on Banks' road uniform. Overall, this card can rightly be labeled masterpiece. Condition PSA 6, value $200 to $250. 1958 Topps Ernie Banks, number 310. After the classic no-design design of the 1957 set, that also standardized cards at 2.5 by 3.5 inches, Topps returned to their 1950s God roots for 1958. Nothing subtle about this Ernie Banks card, with its surface of the sun yellow background, red in huge letters and accents, and a gargantuan noggin shot of a guy who would win his first National League MVP award that fall. It's a classic look that fits the era as well as any card of the hobby. Condition PSA 6, value $225 to $300. 1958 Topps Ernie Banks All Star, number 482. Except for Banks' 1958 All Star card, that is. This one looks like it belongs on the 1950 movie marquee. Heck, it looks like it is a 1950 movies marquee. Now playing the Chicago Cubs, starring award winning shortstop Ernie Banks. It's a great card that instantly transports you back in time to pre expansion baseball and the excitement of pulling a special card from your penny pack. Condition PSA 6, value $75 to $85. 1959 Topps Ernie Banks number 350. Banks had just won his first MVP award when this card was issued, and he would nab another for his efforts in 1959. It was sort of an interesting proposition for the time, given that the Cubs finished well under 500 and in fifth place in the National League each of those summers. Most of the time in those days, it took a winning team to yield individual hardware. The card itself shows Banks in the middle of receiving a ball, or maybe doing infield warm-ups, or a staged version of the same. It also leaves the eye wanting more, thanks to the porthole view of the game's most celebrated shortstop of the moment. Condition PSA 7, value $250 to $275. 1959 Topps Ernie Banks Cub Clubbers, number 147. Dale Long was an interesting player, setting the baseball world on fire by hitting home runs in 8 straight games for the 1956 Pittsburgh Pirates, then becoming the major's first left-handed catcher in nearly 60 years for the 1958 Cubs. Jiggs Donahue turned that trick in 1902. Long followed that up by landing on this fun card with Banks in 1959 as a Cubs clubber, along with left fielder Walt Morin. The three had combined for 93 home runs in 1958, and I'll let you guess which one of them combined for just over half of that total. For the record, Cubs teammate Lee Walls and Bobby Thompson each homered Long that summer. Condition PSA 7, value $40 to $60. 1959 Topps Ernie Banks MVP number 469. Part of a 10-card run of baseball thrills late in the set, this Banks card celebrates his 1958 National League MVP performance and was issued during the summer he was winning his second MVP in a row, 1959 that is. This painted shot gives an unusual glimpse of Banks sliding home. Condition PSA 7, value $55 to $60. 1959 Topps Ernie Banks All-Star, number 559. Banks was a hot commodity in the late 1950s, as evidenced by this, his fourth card in the 1959 top set that stretched to just 572 cards in total. You could expect to find a different Ernie card about once per series, in other words. This one shows a pensive young Banks in a tree-filled sunny day, all wrapped up in a busy bright red border. Nothing subtle about the 1959 Topps Ernie Banks All-Star card. Condition, PSA 7, value $145 to $165. 1960 Topps Ernie Banks, number 10. Early Wynn scored the first card of the 1960 set, perhaps a nod towards Majors leading 22 wins in 1959 and his march on 300 victories in his 40s, not to mention the pennant his Chicago White Sox had won in 1959. Joe Adcock and Wally Moon also appeared in the first 9 slots of the 1960 Topps set, as does a combo card of Willie Mays and the Giants manager Bill Rigney. But the first true superstar single? Yeah, that one belongs to the 2-time reigning National League MVP Ernie Banks, who looks majestic in side-by-side shots on this horizontal card front, accented by the Cubby Head logo. Condition PSA 7, value $250 to $350. 1960 Topps Ernie Banks All-Star, number 560. Banks appeared in both All-Star games of each in 1959 and 1960, so it's little wonder that he also appeared in Topps' 1960 All-Star subset. These All-Star specials were about as bold as Banks' own 1958 and 1959 seasons, too, thanks to the huge 60 background that makes them among the most identifiable baseball cards of all time. Condition PSA 7, value $135 to $185. 1961 Topps Ernie Banks National League Home Run Leaders, number 43. Banks slipped to 4th in the National League MVP voting in 1960, but he still led the senior circuit in home runs with 41. That was his second and final long ball crown. He won with 47 in 1958 and landed him at the head of the class on his 1961 Topps Leaders card that also features Milwaukee Braves teammate Hank Aaron and Eddie Matthews, as well as Cardinals great Ken Boyer. Condition PSA 7, value $50 to $55. 1961 Topps Ernie Banks, number 350. Looking at this hatless card of Banks, you have to wonder if there was rumblings about a possible trade away from the Cubs as the 1961 season dawned. Dropping a player's cap is one of Topps tricks for staying current after all, and it made it easier to just change the team design on the card when the deal did go through. No airbrush necessary. A little research shows that there was indeed various trade rumors involving Banks over the years, so it is possible. What's for sure is that the 1961 Topps Ernie Banks baseball card is about as generic a pasteboard as you're likely to find of a Hall of Famer. Condition PSA 7, value $150 to $200. 1961 Topps Ernie Banks MVP number 485. This blue base Banks is part of a 16-card run in the second series of 1961. Topps showcased American and National League MVPs from 1950 through 1960. Banks was one of four players, along with Yogi Berra, Roy Campanella, and Mickey Mantle, to appear with multiple years on their cards, representing the multiple MVPs they had nabbed in the preceding 11 years. Any surprise, those multi-awarded guys produced four Cooperstown plaques among them. Condition PSA 7, value $100 to $125. 1960 Topps Ernie Banks All-Star, number 575. Banks was once again a double All-Star in 1960, landing him a slot on Topps roster of All-Star cards. Sponsorship for the All-Star card switched from sports magazines to the Sporting News, and collectors were treated to the exploding newspaper motif for the first time. Condition PSA 7, value $100 to $125. 1962 Topps Ernie Banks, number 25. After all the firepower and awards he racked up from 1958 through 1960, Banks played in just 138 games in 1961, thanks largely to a knee injury he'd been working around for years. The result was a 29-homer season, sort of lost in the glare of the big bombers of that summer, and only a base card in the 1962 Topps set, even though he did make it into one or two 1961 All-Star games. Good thing it was a great-looking classic card, huh? Condition PSA 7, value $140 to $170. 1963 Topps Ernie Banks, National League home run leaders, number 3. Banks moved from shortstop to first base in 1962, and he responded with a big bounce-back season at the plate that included 37 home runs, 104 RBI, and 2 All-Star selections. Not surprisingly, Mr. Cub was all over the 1963 Topps set, beginning with his home run leader card that he shares with Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, Frank Robinson, and Orlando Cepeda. It's a whole lot of slugging power all on one card. Condition PSA 7, value $160 to $180. 1963 Topps Ernie Banks and Hank Aaron, Power Plus, number 242. It may not have carried quite the swagger that Manager's Dream did in 1962, but this pairing of Banks and Aaron surely made young collectors squeal with delight whenever it emerged from a 1963 Topps wax pack. Condition PSA 7, value $250 to $325. 1963 Topps Ernie Banks, number 380. Banks' 1963 Topps base card is nothing special or outrageous, just a simple, well-lit card of a Cubs legend and then future Hall of Famer, which, when you think about it, really does make it kind of a special card after all. Condition PSA 7, value $250 to $300. 1964 Topps Ernie Banks, number 55. Banks' playing time dropped again in 1963 to 130 games, and his 18 home runs weren't enough to inspire any special cards that next summer. Topps also dropped their All-Star cards in 1964, and Banks had missed the All-Star cut anyway in 1963. As in 1962, all that added up to a single base card in the 1964 Topps set. Condition PSA 7, value $135 to $185. 1965 Topps Ernie Banks, number 510. At 33, Banks was back in the lineup on the regular in 1964, but the power really didn't bounce back. 23 home runs and 95 RBI are okay, but not earth-shattering for a slugging first baseman. No All-Star berth, no appearance on a league leaderboards. It all added up to, again, just the base card in the 1965 Topps set. This one is sort of iconic, though, with Banks featured in profile, ready for his place on a coin. Condition PSA 7, value $135 to $165. 1966 Topps Ernie Banks, number 204. Banks made it back to the All-Star game in 1965 for the first time since 1962, but even his 28 home runs and 106 RBI weren't enough to get him on the leaderboards. Consequently, the lean years for Banks collectors continued that next summer, as there was just one base card of Mr. Cub in 1966 Topps set. Condition PSA 7, value $125 to $140. 1967 Topps Ernie Banks, number 215. Same deal in 1967. After managing just 15 home runs in 1966, Banks landed on just a base card in the classic 1967 top set. This one is a beauty, though, with Ernie flashing his cubby blue under a perfect, even bluer sky. Condition PSA 7, value $85 to $125. 1968 Topps Ernie Banks, number 355. Banks made it back to the All Star game and back into 20 homer territory in 1967, but it wasn't enough for him to escape his cardboard purgatory. There was just one 1968 Topps burlap card of the Cubs legend, but at least it features an amazing smile perched above the cubby on his left sleeve. Condition PSA 7, value $110 to $120. 1969 Topps Ernie Banks, number 6. Topps sort of lost whatever creative drive they had during the last half of the 1960s, at least as far as their image selection went. Case in point, this 1969 Topps Banks base card, though sunny and bright, features the same image as his 1968 Topps card. Hey, at least they cropped it a bit differently. Condition PSA 7, value $100 to $110. 1969 Topps Ernie Banks, National League Home Run Leaders, number 20. Banks had cranked up the wattage one last time at age 37 in 1968, cranking 32 long balls in the year of the pitcher. That got him back in the National League leaderboards and prompted Topps to include him on this power pack trio with Willie McCovey and Dick Allen. Condition PSA 7, value $25 to $30. 1970 Topps Ernie Banks, number 630. Banks made his final All Star appearance in 1969, but that didn't land him an All Star card in the 1970 Topps set. Instead, collectors were treated to a really nice base card of the aging legend and nothing more. Condition PSA 7, value $100 to $150. 1971 Topps Ernie Banks, number 525. Banks played in just 72 games in 1970, popping 12 home runs. Those numbers fell to 39 games played and 3 home runs in 1971. He retired after that 1971 season, and in keeping with the standards of the time, Topps did not issue a career capper card for him in 1972. That leaves this black bordered 1971 Topps Beauty as the last Ernie Banks card, and it's become something of a hobby classic. Condition PSA 7, value $200 to $225. 1973 Topps Ernie Banks, Cub Coaches, number 81. Banks was actually a player coach during this final season in 1971. He dropped the player portion moving forward, but remained on with the Cubs as a coach in 1972 and 1973. That turned out to be the boon for collectors when Topps included coaches on manager cards in their 1973 set. And thus, we have the only Whitey Lockman, Hank Aguirre, Ernie Banks, Larry Jensen, and Pete Reiser card the world has ever seen. Condition PSA 8, value $30 to $50. WaxPackGods.com